So, good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Welcome to another Muddy Puddles. We are having some
Muddy Puddles today.
tonight. So we have some competing sounds.
Yes, we hope that it doesn't drown out our actual voices.
Yes.
So, please share it. Please like it, share it with somebody who may benefit from this immensely. So we're going to take just a few more seconds for us to get things rolling. Share, like. We might have some competition even with tonight because some people who support the party that you can hear might be listening or watching. But we hope that there are a few persons who would listen tonight, and even if you don't get it all tonight, you can tune in or watch at your own leisure. Right.
And thank you so much for those of you who continue to join. Good night, Sharon. Good night, Marilyn. So nice to see you guys. Again, always let us know if you're hearing us clearly.
Yes.
Good night, Sia. We want to make sure that we could share the information with you, that your life could be transformed, that you could experience deliverance in your relationships, in your marriages, because it's supposed to be enjoyable. Good night, Layla. Nice to see you guys. So just let us know if you're hearing us. We're going to try to speak up just to make sure you get the information. Tonight we're going to be continuing from what we started last week, which was the topic on sex. Good night, Maria. How are you? And I saw Cindy and seeing Luan. Good night, Luan. You know what? I'm interesting enough. Thank you so much, Sharon. The sound is perfect.
Okay.
So many women come on. And we're not seeing them.
No, some men out there, man, but they're quiet.
Well, guys, we needed to be on and commenting and sharing because a lot of this sexual information is pertaining to you, as you can imagine.
Yes.
So we don't want our men to feel like the women taking over as usual. But really, it is for all of us, male and female, who can enjoy good marital relationships. All right? So
forgive us for the noise, as we mentioned. You're going to hear it, but try and ignore it, baby.
Good. Sia said her husband is with her. Excellent. So
Who's
hi,
that?
hubby.
Who's that?
Sia.
De Castro, yes. my classmate.
Excellent.
Wonderful to have you.
Kudos to him. Yes.
Right. So give us a few seconds as we try and link with persons. Yes. Thank you. Billy, you can start the recap.
All right, yes. So if you remember from last week, we started talking about sexy Christians, and I'm just going to show you. This is the book that we're teaching you guys from. It's called, It's called Sexy Christians, and it's by Dr. Ted Roberts and his wife, Diane Roberts. Christian authors, and we really want to not only impart from them, but what God has allowed us to learn ourselves, experience as it relates to marriage, the sexual relationship, and the importance of it. So last week we really looked on, just recapping, that sex is very important in a marriage relationship.
Yes.
And no less important. Say amen, amen. No less important in a Christian marriage. What has happened so often is that we have these mixed messages, especially for girls and boys, mostly girls growing up, that parents have tried to keep us abstinent by scaring us away from sex. And then when you get married, they expect you to automatically transform into this social
and ignore everything you said.
Sexual being. Yes. But we want to help persons understand that we do not have to be afraid of sex. The other thing is that when it comes to the intimacy needs of men and women, for men, it is high on the list of priorities.
Yes.
And for women, it is very important. But it becomes even more wonderful when other things are met, when other emotional needs are met. And so there is not really there is a dichotomy, but it's actually a synergy of the differences that make the sexual relationships work. All right? So tonight, you want to go talk about what we're talking about tonight? You want to start?
Yes. So tonight we are going a little deeper because one of the things that we realized, and we did some studies and some preparation for this evening was that 20%, this is a research that has been done, they say 20% of married couples have sexless marriage.
Let's just let them sink in, because that's a reality. Lots of persons are married and there's no sex or inadequate sex in the marriage. Okay,
Yeah.
so just a second, let that sink in.
Yes. And so for us, that's really tough.
Yeah.
And it's 20%. It might be, thank God, 80% may be enjoying the blessing that God has given to couples, but that means that there is a fair amount that may not be doing so. Now, the issue of sexlessness, if that's the word, if not, is not based on the amount of time sex occurs, because each couple's needs are different, and but it's really based on the absence of sex and how that affects the marriage.
Yes.
So in one marriage, having sex every day may be feasible.
Yeah.
At one stage of your life. In another stage, it may not be so feasible. 2 times or 3 times a week might be sufficient. There might be weeks where it may not happen. So we won't tell a couple the magic number is 4 or 5 or 6. But what we know is that sexual intimacy is necessary in marriage.
And can I just say that the issue there is that there has to be an understanding in the marriage between the partners of what is normal for you as a couple and what is abnormal. That is why it's so important that you don't go around trying to compare your marriage with another marriage.
That's right.
Because age brings a difference in the marriage.
Yes.
Work and stress levels bring a difference in the sexual relationship. I had a friend who was very open with us. She said she and her husband have sex every day. Those times I wasn't married, and I was like, oh my gosh, I wonder if I could do that. But she made it sound so exciting. It was like it's either breakfast, lunch, or dinner, but once a day. They're having sex, and it was just when she had a period they had that break. But it went back to for them it was a normal thing, like getting up and saying good morning or saying good night. That was a part of their marriage. And there were others who would have maybe 2 times a week, 3 times a week. So again, don't go around comparing your marriage with somebody else's marriage. Pay attention to your garden.
Yeah.
Water it and know what is necessary in your garden.
Cindy says she's hearing the loud noise in the background.
Oh boy.
This is just what we have to deal with tonight. Unfortunately, this is the political season. If you're not from Trinidad and Tobago, this is the political season. We wondered if we should have done it tonight, but we are pressing on. And please ask any questions. Nothing is out of bounds. So let's see if we can fight through the noise in the background. We don't grudge anybody participating in their political activity. It's just part of the season. We just didn't know it was going to happen
tonight. We really didn't know.
So we're going to look at some of the physical barriers to sexual intimacy, because there comes a point where you may actually be experiencing some struggle relating to it, and I can bet you that it may not happen now, but it may happen later on in your life. Praise God if it doesn't happen at all during a long marriage. Yes. But we have a sense that in some marriages, based on the life experiences and the stages in the particular person's life, there might be some issues. So what are some of the issues? What are some of the barriers? We're calling them barriers to sexual intimacy. What are some of them?
Okay, so let's start with the physical barriers. Now, the key thing to understand as we go ahead is that you must be aware and able to communicate these issues with your partner. So the physical barriers are some of the most obvious ones. One of the things that could cause sexual intimacy to be affected in a marriage is illness.
Yeah.
So you may have somebody who is dealing with a really chronic issue, a terminal issue. We have cancers, we have diabetes. Some persons, I'm going to talk about that one in another instance. You may have persons who may have had surgeries. I've known persons who have had surgeries, and because of where they had the surgery, they lost the ability to become aroused easily. So sometimes we're thinking, oh, he just doesn't want to have sex, but then there are issues that may be causing it.
That's right.
We also have the natural aging issues. So, or natural occurrences. So we have menopause. Menopause is one of those things that often affects a woman's sex drive. Because a lot of times what comes with menopause is like the vaginal dryness. And if you know anything about the vagina, don't worry, it's all holy, it's all important. Yes. The length of the vagina is about 4 inches. But when arousal takes place, it allows it to expand to be able to receive the length of the penis, right? But in menopause, right? The penis. Oh, it's the length of. Oh my gosh, that's a different no, but this is science. Just hear me out. But when things like menopause, some people have reactions, side effects of medication. Sometimes vaginal dryness comes in where even when they may feel aroused, there's no lubrication. And so they may feel, if they try to have sex, it could be scratchy, it could be painful, it could be more friction than pleasure. There's an easy solution for vaginal dryness. You talk to your doctor, you use a lubricant. But sometimes, I've heard of men who say, I don't use lubrication. They think it has to happen naturally, and so that woman must be stuck there dealing with a dry, itchy sexual encounter. In that
case, the husband just has to be understanding.
Yes.
And
lubrication does not mean it's something wrong with you or the man. It just means that you need a little help.
Yeah.
And that's not that. What we're saying is nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Right?
And it makes the experience more comfortable.
Right.
It takes a lot of understanding men. There are things that are going to happen to you and happen to your spouse, your wife, that you have to be able to understand. There was a stage in our marriage when, after having children, in order to plan properly, we had to use contraceptives.
Yeah. And contraceptives can cause some of it as well.
And so Billy preferred, and I have to go with her, not to use the pill. And so I had to go to condoms.
Yes.
Now, for some men, the condoms take some adjustment.
No.
There are some men who said no to, but then if you're going to engage in sex and you have to do particular things, then there's some adjustments you have to make. Yeah. After a while, it got normal. Yes, it's not the preferred thing, but you have to do what you have to do.
But the thing is, communication, openness, sharing, that makes it easy.
Right, so that's one of the solutions. If there's some physical issues and there's some other physical issues, men, somehow, somewhere...
We consider, so before we go to that one there, painful sex. In addition to the vaginal issues, that happens a lot with women. Men would have it if they have a urinary tract infection or some STI, which is another physical issue. But women often experience painful sex. Could I put this plug in very quickly? Women, if you are experiencing painful sex, go to your doctor. It is often an indication of something more serious, like something with the cervix. It's one of the indicators of cervical cancer. So if you find yourself bleeding after sex or having painful sex, especially excessively, go to the doctor. Don't be ashamed. Go and tell them this was happening. All right? I know one time I used to wonder, when the doctor asked me when last I have sex, I have to tell them, just like they ask about your period. Don't worry about that. It's an indication that you need to talk to your doctor. All right?
And so that's one of the other issues. Men, and then I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to talk like a doctor. Just that to say that impotence happens, erectile dysfunction. So maybe it's not all impotence, there's some dysfunction. And that can be caused by all kinds of things. There might be even a psychological issue, might be a mind thing, but it could also be a physical thing. You could be getting older, yes? There's no way a man at 20 is the same as a man at 65. Yes? There are things you could do at 20 that you can't do at 65. There are things that you could do early in your marriage that 25 years after you may or may not. God bless you if you can, but most normal men can't do the same things that you used to be able to do.
Or the capacity is reduced a little bit.
The capacity is reduced, yes? Your flexibility is not the same when you're 20 compared to your 65. So be careful if you want to do the same acrobatics that you were doing when you were 25 and when you get to 65. All right? So there's some realities that you just have to understand, that there's some physical barriers that can come into play. Yes? And sometimes the erectile dysfunction may be a mental thing that you might be able to work on. But sometimes there might be a need to go to a doctor. Now, men are afraid of doctors for some reason. But if it's an issue in your marriage, you have to get answers. Don't just don't go and try your own thing. Don't go and buy some.
I mean,
don't go and buy something to the corner. Don't listen to the men saying try this and try that. Yes.
I mean, they say all kinds of things.
And it may work. Because that may help you mentally, but it might be good to go to a doctor.
And the other thing with that is that with a lot of men, it's not just impotence in terms of having an erection, but a lot of times the issue is they can't maintain.
Dysfunction.
They can't maintain
That's
the
erectile
erection.
dysfunction.
Right.
So the maintenance of the erection, that may become a problem too. Yes? Or you're not able to stay long enough so that your wife can also experience extra pleasure as it is.
So what does that do to a man?
It gets to the core, because men see themselves, well, let me change that. If you're not able to exhibit some kind of sexual prowess, or you're not able to pleasure your spouse in the way that you would hope, then that can start having effect. You even might affect your self-esteem. Yes. And based on my readings on that, it's something that you really have to look after. That's why you have to take care of your health. Exercise. My wife has to get on me on that. Eat properly. People who drink plenty, you can affect your ability to your libido. If you smoke, it's going to affect your libido.
Diabetes,
marijuana, because that's smoke too. Yes, and other things can happen in that regard. So just be careful. Even your lifestyle can affect it. And they're saying there are younger and younger men who are using what they call it again? Viagra and
Viagra-like
things, and they're using that. You're not supposed to be really at a
hypertension.
Hypertension. Yes, thank you. So if you're 20, 25, 30, you're not supposed to be really having that kind of dysfunction quite yet. So that means that there's some other things that are happening that Viagra can't help you long term with, and you probably need to talk to a doctor.
And I could just share this. Having worked with persons throughout the years, I remember working with I remember one in particular who had used one of these over-the-counter stuff, the horny goat weed, and ended up having an erection for 3 hours. Now, if you know anything about sex and men, the erection should not last 3 hours. That's unnatural. That's a medical issue. And they actually have to break the penis. The breaking the penis really is having to cut the blood vessel. You felt that, eh?
Please don't say that.
No, it's a real story. It's a guy I worked with who later developed substance abuse issues because he couldn't deal with that fact. But he went and used this thing, and medically they had to cut, when I say break the blood vessels, so he was, after that time, he was not able to have an erection after that, because the blood vessels is what causes the penis to become erect. And that destroyed that man. He became one of those guys in the street, because he could not deal with that. And I mean, we need more sexologists in our region, and we need more Christian sexologists. Because the sexologist is going to tell you all kind of things.
Right, because remember we said,
principles that can be guided by
and we want to re-emphasize this for those persons who are tuning in. Sex is not dirty.
Right.
God ordained sex for marriage. Your bed is undefiled. Those things that have been told to us and taught to us that somehow it is not nice, please get that out, but it is meant for context. So we're not encouraging persons to engage in sex outside of marriage. If you find yourself in that situation, I pray that eventually you can get out of it. But the ideal situation is for you to be married and you can enjoy it. That's why we can talk like this about the sex. Sex, it doesn't scare us. It shouldn't scare you. And
you shouldn't be ashamed
or
embarrassed. If you find yourself feeling ashamed or embarrassed about your sexual encounters, then you know something is wrong. Either you're outer context,
right?
As
and
a
we're
Christian,
going to talk about
because we know it's not a Christian, but as a Christian, you're outer context, or there's something going on within the marriage where there's not the trust issue, there's not the ability to be vulnerable with your partner.
So, and then side effects of medication. So just be careful. Sometimes you're taking a medication, and that can affect how you are able to sexually please your spouse.
Thank you. Marilyn is saying Viagra can also affect the heart. So you need to consult a physician. So thank you so much, because there are a lot of persons who just feel like I just pop the blue pill, and it gives them what they need. But these things have side effects.
Right.
All right? And God made us able to perform. We just mentioned we have STIs, but this is something that can affect sexual relationships, especially if you have STIs that have like
Lingering
flare-ups
effects
or outbreaks. So if you have syphilis or those sort of things, genital warts, you may...
You should have communicated that with your spouse.
And you talk to your doctor.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean if you have an STI that you cannot, even HIV, that you cannot have a healthy sexual relationship. But allow yourself to be guided. Herpes, excellent. Allow yourselves to be guided by your medical practitioner and allow God to guide you with each other.
That's right.
So when you're having the breakout, you don't want to be having sex when that could make it easier to spread and those sort of things, all right? So just be aware of that.
So the next one, emotional barriers. Now this is probably more critical than the physical.
Yeah.
Yes? It carries probably as much importance. If you have an unnatural fear of sex, and that can have its own repercussions. If you have an unnatural fear of sex, then somehow fear that your vagina will tear or anything like that, maybe Billy, you can go a little further. Usually the result is as a result of poor education or your socialization, right? So you have to get through that. And in preparation for marriage, let's say you're dating somebody and you're preparing to get married, there has to be a discussion, because if you have an unnatural fear of it, it's going to affect your marriage.
And that's kind of what the all the folks used to do to kind of scare girls, like I said, into abstinence. You know, that man can mash up your so-and-so, and you know, next thing it too. And men, what you used to do with men, it's also a derogatory way. Talk about the penis will get lost in the vagina because it's so wide, especially if a man met a woman who had a child before. So they kind of derate the woman and her body and the ability to have pleasurable sex by making him or her feel like, you know, this is not going to work. But if your mind has a faulty view of sex and what the act actually entails, then it can affect your ability to connect and really experience the pleasure of sex, because you're always going to be functioning from a fear level.
Right. And so you also have past sexual trauma. Now, this is so critical. Past sexual trauma and abuse, sexual abuse or something like that, especially in your childhood or your adolescence, and it strikes at the core of your sexual identity, secure sexual identity, and in fact there is a direct correlation between sexual wounding and sexual difficulty in marriage. So if you have been raped, if you have been abused in that regard, if it's incest, right, or anything like that, you have to grapple with that first. You probably would have needed to talk to a counselor. You probably need to go through a time of deliverance, ask God to heal you and restore you as it is.
And close that door, because the enemy uses that as an open door to get in. But let me just add to that as well. There is a specific thing that happens to the traumatized brain. And the earlier the child experiences sexual trauma, the more traumatized the brain is, because the brain is still developing. And so the brain, the traumatized brain is actually, that is what they call it, that person becomes hypersensitive, or they are unable sometimes to read cues properly, you know, and they grow into adulthood having those unresolved issues. And sometimes there are many instances, I've encountered some, where someone was raped, whether as a child or as an adolescent, and in the marital relationship, certain touches from the husband took them right back. That's kind of like PTSD. Took them right back to that rape experience, and they became angry, they shut down, and they lashed out at the partner. Normally the men, but understand too, a lot of boys are being sexually assaulted.
Right, so
you have that situation where the spouse is wondering, but why are you behaving so? And you know, they're trying to be loving, but the inability to understand where it's coming from. So here's one of the things I want you to encourage somebody out there tonight. If you have sexual trauma, sexual history in your past, it's important that you get that psychological, that psycho-spiritual help to deal with it, because it can filter into your marital relationship and into your sex life. And in a well-grounded marriage, if you haven't told your partner, that's another thing. It's important that you tell your partner, let your partner know what you have been through. So that is where trust and vulnerability starts in the marriage, that you're not holding these secrets, holding skeletons in your closet, and then one day you open the door looking for one thing and everything pops out, you know? So be open with your partner. I've been through this in your courtship, in your early marriage. I've been through this. How does it affect the way you look at me? Can you still love me with this as my past? Have your partner know what you've been through and get the help. And sometimes you may have to get the help together.
Right. Yeah.
You may have to
work
get the
through.
help together.
And then the last one, this is emotional and spiritual. But if you have had a number of sexual partners before marriage, right? Nobody's perfect. Maybe there was a time in your life that was the case. We don't want to feel guilty or anything like that. God renews and saves us from our past and our sinful behavior. But some people were engaged in sex with a number of people. It's very important that you understand.
Even same sex.
And same sex too. That open
becomes
and even another door. But understand that sometimes you have to go through deliverance because the sexual act was not meant for everybody, for multiple partners. That's not what God ordained it for. It was so that the husband and the wife could connect with each other. There was a connection that happened when a husband and wife makes love, when they know each other. The word of God said no. So if you would have known a number of people, just be mindful that there might be some spiritual things that would have happened as a result of that, and that can affect your ability to be intimate with the partner. Yes. In fact, we had a deliverance service last year, I believe, and we learned of another. One of those spirits, what do they call it again?
Spousal spirit.
The spousal spirit, where because you connected with somebody else, that spirit that was deposited in you then started to claim you, so that somehow the husband cannot connect in the way that they need to, or wife, because a spirit has claimed you as their own. And we have seen it manifest too. We manifested that same day, you know? So just be careful about that. It's something that you need to keep in mind because it can affect your sexual intimacy.
And we're talking like this. Thank you so much for the comments, guys. We're going to come to them because we're seeing something that we have later down. Remember, we're kingdom people. And there are principles in the kingdom that guide every aspect of our lives. And sex is no different. And so it's important that we're able to really function and enjoy our sexual relationships or in our marriages, you know, for the long haul. You know, you can go from sex every day in your 20s, 30s, right down to once a week in your 80s. Go ahead, enjoy yourself. I'm with you. I'm for you. Do it. You know? But enjoy. Let it connect you to each other and connect you, keep you connected in your commitment to God. Right?
And so we have identified some things that you can do.
Yes.
There's some things you can do to remedy the physical things. We have identified those. We have identified some of the things you can do if there's some emotional barriers, and we identify what those are and what you can do. Yes, communication is necessary. Maybe counseling. Maybe there's a need for deliverance. And so those are some of the things that you can seek to do.
But can I go back to one that's so important, and we're going to come to as we go to personal. Awareness is very important. There's some people who are so much hiding behind, you know, a facade of, well, maybe it's, we're going to come to that, maybe it's them. But you have a responsibility for your sexual gratification. It sounds weird, but I am responsible for my sexual pleasure with my marriage. It doesn't mean that I'm supposed to pleasure myself. But it means that I'm responsible to recognize what's going on with me, recognize what's going on in the relationship, as he is responsible as well. And our responsibilities that we take seriously allows us to connect in a better way. Because I'm not holding him accountable for things that I'm supposed to be responsible for, and vice versa.
Right, and so that's a nice segue to the personal, because that we're going to talk about that. But if you're watching us still, please share the live. Please like the live. If you like it, and share it if you really like it. Yes, and we are open to whatever questions you might have. Then there's some personal barriers. Your sexual intimacy can be affected if there are self-esteem issues, or even there's some personal, we call it self-issues, some personal issues. So one of the things that Billy said, can you just continue, Billy? Instead of blaming your spouse, in order to fix the relationship, we must first seek to change ourselves. That's what Robert says in the book, Sexy Christians.
Yes.
Let me say that again. Instead of attempting to blame your spouse
Yes.
in order to fix the relationship, you must first seek to change. We must first seek to change ourselves.
And you see, the thing is, it's so easy for us to say, well, he's not doing that or she's not doing that. Every time I want to have sex, she says she's tired. And whenever I tell him whatever, he says he don't want to do that. We talked about the last time, having those struggles of differences in what is wanted. It's not even really wanted.
Yeah,
somebody may say, well, I like oral sex or I don't like oral sex. Listen, we're not discussing what is right or wrong here, right? That's you have to work with that
in
with
that
God.
regard.
Fear and trembling work us out. Or they may say, well, I like sex in the morning, you like sex in the afternoon, and so you start to blame, and what you have is an impasse. You begin to clash, because at no point, if you're working like that, do you stop to say, okay, what part am I playing, and what part in the problem, and what part can I play in the solution? So I understand, why is it I don't want to have sex in the morning? Is it because I'm afraid of the light, because I don't like my body and I feel the sunlight, you don't have no darkness there to hide, you don't want your husband or your wife to see all your imperfections or whatever, so you have to keep yourself hidden? Or is it because I see certain things I don't want, or experience certain things? You have to be aware of that and be willing to grow and get the help that you need, if you need that help, rather than just pouncing on your partner and saying, well, I don't like this, and you always try to do that, they like to have sex at time. All right, okay, fine. What then can you do in this situation, even if what you need to do is to educate your partner about what you need? Right? So you have a responsibility there. Right. To really learn yourself and teach your partner who you are and what you want, what you like.
And then it's hard if you have self-esteem issues.
Yeah.
Right? So one of the things that can be a barrier is that you don't love yourself. You don't love how you look and what have you. Now, if there are ways in which you can improve how you look, if there are ways in which you can get better, yes, then you should try. You should carry yourself.
For yourself. Start with yourself. So don't. Sorry to cut you. Go ahead. Okay, let me finish. Okay. So even what he's saying there, don't carry yourself looking, trod down. I didn't say trod down, but that's just my word. Practice proper hygiene. Groom yourself. Do something extra. I always like the story of Esther. The Bible said for 6 months before Esther, you may say, well, because she's a king. Well, your husband is your king. Your wife is your queen. Treat them as royalty. They said for 6 months before she got married, she was treated with certain fragrances, with oils, like my essential oils. She was treated, and that got into the place of the beauty, the essence, the fragrance. Now, it doesn't mean things can happen that can change it. People have thyroid issues, their body scent changes, the detergent you use on your clothes, your sweat, what you eat, these affect things. But we're saying, if you're going to become just downright slack and forget to take care of yourself and groom yourself, that can cause loss of interest because of attractiveness changing, and it can affect the sex. So that's your responsibility. Don't let your partner say, boy, have yourself all the time. Why have yourself all the time? If weight is an issue, work on the weight and stop thinking they're trying to get at you. Think of it as, let me improve myself, and you will feel better after. So it's just something, and these are things that we've experienced. I've worked with people who that was the issue. Them come up, they don't want to bathe them skin, then they want to have sex with me. All right, just bathe your skin. It doesn't take that much. Soap and water. You don't even need to do a cowboy. Trust me, a cowboy will help. Because you can't come home sweaty, stinky, touching up everybody and want to go straight into the bed. You don't work in the office with AC. Wash off the sweat. And these things sound funny, but they have affected intimacy in many relationships. Sorry, I overtalk.
No, it's very critical. Yes, work on self. How can I become a better me? Yes, and instead of blaming the other person for everything, how do I deal with me? I'll never forget this. I hope this helps you. My response is my responsibility. Yes, we like to blame people for you do that. In fact, get away from the you statements and deal with the I statements, because that's how I feel. But also understand that the way you respond, the way you act, it depends on you too. My response My action is my responsibility. So you take responsibility for yourself, and the other spouse doing the same. That can result in something really great.
Yeah.
Some other personal barriers may be addiction. If you are with a spouse who has a drug addiction, or an alcohol addiction, or pornography addiction, yes, that can affect the intimacy. Yes.
Especially pornography. You want to talk about that one there too?
So the reason pornography is such a destructive thing is that it demeans the opposite sex. It makes them look different. In fact, you may even start to view the sexual act and view the opposite sex as less than, because of the way the pornography may portray the opposite sex.
And it creates some unrealistic expectations too. I remember when 50 Shades of Grey came, I watched it, confession, I was very upset. You should watch it. And it wasn't like I watched it when it came out. I actually just watched it last year, I think. Because somebody in my office kept talking about it. A woman, I know, a Christian person, like, let me go and watch this thing now.
Let me tell you, you don't need 50 Shades of Grey.
That's what I'm getting to. That's what I'm getting to.
Experiment in your own bed. You can enjoy your own bed.
50 Shades of Grey is demonic. And we have Christian people watching 50 Shades of Grey and coming home and telling their wife what they want to do. Give me a break. Free yourself from those shackles, because it's demonic. The Spirit of God gives you liberty. The Bible says the marriage bed is undefiled. So the things that happen in 50 Shades of Grey, Hollywood will make anything look good. Anything. But it's so demonic, and they make the bondage like this popular thing. And then you go into your marriage, the pornography and things like that, because remember, pornography could be written material, it could be videographic material, it could be audio material if you don't have visuals. And you go into the marriage expecting these things and thinking, why am I not being satisfied? Because you sat down watching 50 Shades of Grey every night, getting turned on, having an orgasm, whatever you have, and then come wonder why. And your spouse realizes, why can't I allow you to have an orgasm? Because you don't need a spouse. So you kind of dismiss the need for that partner. They become disposable. Your partner is the key person in bringing that pleasure and orgasm in the marriage.
You work with your spouse.
It's the rhythm.
You don't really need those other things.
You don't need no whip and no stone and no.
No, let me tell you. As you see, I wanted to tackle this too, because views of sex can affect can become a barrier.
Yes.
What you put on your table to eat is what you have decided as a couple to put on the table to eat. We're not going to tell you, don't do this and don't. We just say, don't kill each other.
I was about to say, if you don't co-op, it's just your choice. I mean, that was just...
Don't hurt each other physically.
And don't degrade
each other.
Yeah.
But what you do in your bed is your bed. So there are people who have different views in terms of oral sex.
They have different views.
He's
like some Muslims mentioned, how do I say this nicely now? They're different views. And there's some pastors who preach adamantly for or against it. We're not here to do that.
No.
We're here to say to you, your marriage bed should be undefiled. Right. It should honor God, and you should feel better coming from that experience and not worse, not less than.
Right. Yeah.
So if your preference is anal sex or breast sex, or I don't know whatever, oral sex, or there's going to be a lot of arguments with anal sex. I'm not saying to do it, please. That's my disclaimer. Yeah. But you have to work with both of you. And no, we're not telling what we do either, okay? Yeah. So don't wonder about that. That's just crossing the line. But you two have to agree. That's what we're saying to you. Sit down and talk about it. You know what? We spend so much time talking about Bill's problem, who talking about you, and you spend no time talking about your sexual relationship, and you wonder why you can't enjoy your sex. Yeah. Plan it. Talk about it. What you like, what you don't like. Yeah. When you like it. How you like it.
Yeah. So, because that can become a barrier. So, because he wants a particular position, you don't like that position, you just need to have a proper conversation with your spouse, yes, and agree on the things that you will have on your table. What you put on your table is what you alone have access to. Yeah. That's your feast. You do as you have agreed on, and that gives both of you pleasure. Yeah. Yes.
And I want to say, just be sensitive, especially for the men. Sometimes men have an issue being sensitive, but women too are now becoming a little bit more insensitive. Because sometimes the reasons why they may not like something is because they have history behind it. Maybe a position, maybe come from trauma. You know, maybe they were raped and they were put in a particular position. So it's important to be sensitive and talk about it. And I like that word, Marilyn, compromise. Compromise. You must be willing to have that compromise and come together. If we can't agree right off the bat, how can we come to an amicable agreement, even respecting our differences? That's a synergy. We don't have to be the same. If we're going to be the same, we're going to be two bland potatoes. Synergy is what makes us work.
That's right.
Right?
That's your bed. You enjoy
Make
your
it
bed.
nice. If you like satin sheets, put on satin sheets. If you like cotton, use cotton. If you sweat plenty, you can use satin, use cotton. Don't let TV dictate these things to you, and then you end up having unrealistic expectations in the marriage.
That's right.
You're going to be burdened, and Hollywood have their marriages. You don't have the good examples anyway. Let the Spirit of God direct you. Pray about it. Go to God. Say, God, this is bothering me. I'm not sure what to do. It affects me. I don't know how to talk about it to him or talk about it to her. Let God guide you. I guarantee you, he's interested in every aspect of your life, and your sex life is no different.
Right. Look here, we have been talking for most of these sessions. Ask us a question.
They have lots of comments.
Yes. Ask a question.
If you have any questions,
we will answer to the best of our abilities.
What about the relational barriers? And that's the last one for tonight. Yes. We don't want to exhaust the topic and not give you any fun going and doing your own research. Yes. That could be good for you. Go and do research together, do a project. And have a practical component. I remember talking to somebody who said their church had a marriage retreat, and after the night session, the woman said, "All y'all women, don't put on them all nighty. Get something and go home to go in your cabin with your husband." And the next morning, she asked him, "So how was last night?" Now we're not gonna ask you how was last night. That's not our business. But doing the research together could be real. It could be a bonding experience. I remember the chemicals are released even during sex. The dopamine, that's a chemical thing.
God ordained it.
Right. So it's making you have the pleasure of a feeling and want you to come back for more.
That's right.
All right. So make it work.
Yes. So what are the relational issues? This is the last. What about some of the barriers, the relational issues? It's the trust issues. Yeah. If there is no trust, then I'm telling you, it will affect the intimacy. Yeah.
And where does mistrust come from? So many times.
Well, we talked about trust. It can come from so many areas.
So many issues, but we can just highlight this point where many times it comes from your own experiences in the past. If you had many broken relationships, many dating relationships or courting, especially if you were disappointed by someone you were engaged to, or in this current relationship you're having issues, you may find yourself feeling, I can't open up and trust this person. And if you have part of yourself closed off, it's going to affect how you function in your sexual relationship.
Or it's something that could have happened in your marriage relationship, and that has caused a breaking of the trust or a reduction of the trust. That can affect your intimacy. Yes. Again, we say communicate. Yes. And make sure you address all those issues. Yeah. And the conversation we're having is not just for married people. This is for those who plan to get married too. So even if you're single now, by the grace of God, you may not be single for the rest of your life.
And I pray that unless you want that.
Unless you want that. But this information might be necessary. Yes. All right? What are some of the other relational barriers? Unexpressed and unresolved anger.
Can I add, and resentment.
And resentment. And the anger causes the resentment. So the unexpressed anger. Yes? That is something. I think women do this better. The word is the better? Women do this more than men.
Let's restructure that sentence now.
The man knows she's angry.
I'm not really sure. I hear you. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, let me go and then you can respond. Yeah. So the unexpressed. Hi, honey. Yeah. How are you doing today? Well. Are you not as lovey-dovey as you, or something happened and you're on the other side of the bed, right at the end, and You have to come right over. There's something that is bothering the spouse, but they just won't express it.
Maybe it's not the right time.
That's
because
true.
for instance, for me, when I get really angry, I normally don't react right away. I try, because if I react right away, it's going to be explosive. Especially
And
when
then,
I'm really angry.
then I say, Lily, you okay? But I can see she's not okay.
And most times I say yeah, or like, just go, But if you have anger issues, unexpressed in that marriage, something went wrong, unexpected. It doesn't have to be sexually related. That's the thing.
No,
it could be that he spent off the money, he didn't pay the rent on time,
but
or he said
it is
something.
anger that you have not spoken about.
Right, you haven't dealt with it.
Dealt with it.
That can clog the flow and the expression of warmth, care, and love.
So let me stop you. Not really dealt with. That is unresolved. The unexpressed is that you haven't spoken about it. You haven't told the person that you're angry about it or it has bothered you, right? And then you have the unresolved. So you have expressed it, or you haven't expressed it, but you have not resolved it.
Because it's still that's holding on, not letting go. So think about it. Here was one step when we went out of time. The Bible says, if you have aught against your brother and you want to come to my table to eat for communion, he said no. Put that down, go make amends, and then come back. Think about your marital relationship like that. Now, is it always easy? No. Is it always easy? No. But sometimes the principles are there. You're eating at the table of your spouse. That's what it is. It's a meal. It's an enjoyable experience. But issues are there. You don't want to come in, like I heard this Black Love Story episode they have on BT. One guy says sometimes he get a log. He's like, I don't really like a log. I'm not going to reject it. Just lie down there and take it. He said, I'm not going to reject the log, but I prefer it not be a log. So don't just sit down, lie down like a log and say, well, take it how you want it. Or just be upset. Talk about it. Turn off the sheet and say, me vex. This is what happened. And then, because they always talk about makeup sex being the better sex, eat then. Yeah. Enjoy the meal that you both have with each other. But after you have discussed it and made amends the best way that you can.
There. And resolve it. Because unresolved anger results in resentment.
And resentment
is corrosive.
Yeah.
Corrosive to your body.
Physical body.
Corrosive to your mentality, spirituality, and it was going to be corrosive to your marriage. Yeah. All right? So please, and practice forgiveness. Oh boy, make sure your basket is full, overflowing with forgiveness. The amount of times I have had to be forgiven and I have had to forgive my wife, we can't count now. There will be plenty other times. Please be willing to forgive. Yeah? And when you really forgive, eventually you will forget it. Yes? But please be willing to forgive your spouse. Yes? And then the other thing is, you can't be vulnerable fully with someone. This is just to add on. You can't be fully vulnerable with your spouse if you are always angry. Yeah. And the anger leads to unkind words. That's the other thing. It's amazing. I've always said this. The people that you care most about, and you check your life, people you care most about, the people that are most important to you, sometimes you say some things to them that you would not say to an enemy. You would not say to somebody down the road. So careful. Sometimes the anger can lead you to say things that you really don't mean. Yes? And so please remember that. Then you may have had some rejection issues in your life. Yes? Or in the current relationship. The other thing is that there may have been some infidelity. Yes? And so that is going to have an impact in your relationship, your ability to connect sexually with your partner.
Infidelity one time just changes the trajectory of a marriage. Also, it breaks trust. And once that happens, there's so much work, back-breaking work that must be done to rebuild that. And so the key thing is, just don't go there. If you find yourself having issues, you're not communicating, you're not getting along in your relationship, work on the issues and don't try to confide. One of the things we have found a lot, even when we work with people, is that you and I, just an example, we're having an issue and I have my good friend Robert at work. And rather than talking to Nevin about the issues that we are having and talking to God and saying, God, this man upsetting me, I'm about to do something, I go and tell Robert, come to work, my face sour. And I would say, what happened? I started to tell her about, oh, Nevin this, and Nevin that, and Nevin whatever. And I saw tired of Nevin. And all Robert there is doing is waiting for you to say, what can I do for you? And so many times infidelity happens like that. And once infidelity happens, it's hard for you to go back to that place of intimacy. Because one, you've introduced a foreign object into the sexual equation.
But thank God it's not impossible.
It's not impossible.
Right? Many have gotten stronger as a result. But don't test your marriage like that.
I like that. Don't test it. Don't
Yeah,
do that.
not like
Don't
that.
do
You're going to be tested in so many other areas. Don't test it like that.
Yeah.
If it has been tested like that and you have gotten over it, please don't go there again.
Yeah.
Yes? It's not healthy. It is not godly. It is not good. And it's going to affect the long-term viability of your marriage.
Yeah.
Yes?
And then we had the last one where we talked about, and this is so important, violence in your marriage. And listen, don't feel because we're church people, I'm not saying us, but there are lots of instances of violence, intimate partner violence, rape and abuse in Christian marriages. Because there are lots of misconceptions and miseducations, especially among our men, about what marriage and relationship and sex should be. And so sometimes there's that trauma that comes in the relationship. One of the things we have found actually, even my regular day job, is that a lot of men who have erectile issues, because like you said, it emasculates them or it hits them at the core. They project that onto the woman and uses that to be a reason for abuse. So they make the woman feel as if you're the reason why I can't have or keep an erection. You're the reason why this sex life is so poor. And the woman normally, if she doesn't have proper knowledge or self-awareness, she takes that on and takes the abuse, because most times you want to make the marriage work, you want to make the relationship work. But understand that violence in marriage will take away from the sexual relationship.
Take away everything.
Everything. I've always said I can't.
It will affect the sexual intimacy. And we hope that if you're in a circumstance like that, with your spouse not giving you any hope that they are willing to make the change, don't subject yourself to that. We encourage. We know it's hard. We know it's not easy to break out because there's so many other things that you have to consider.
Yes, especially if children are involved.
But don't, please, I want you to hear this. God does not approve of abuse. God does not want you to stay in an abusive relationship. Talk to your pastor, find some people who can support, and then find a way to get out in Jesus' name. Yeah, we know it's not easy.
You're not made for abuse. You're not made for abuse. You're made, the Bible says you're made in the image and likeness of God. Yeah. And he said, I love to use even with my clients, I say, when God was done, it was after he made man, he said it was very good. Yeah. So whenever you feel yourself feeling down, talking about the personal issues, sometimes you're feeling down, you're feeling less than, you have to look at yourself and say, listen, God says, I'm very good. And even if my husband doesn't see that or my wife doesn't see that, say, hey, I'm very good. You have to get a little attitude sometimes, because it's so important that you understand that you have value and you have worth. Not that you don't have imperfections, but you have value and you have worth. And God has said you are very good. And when two very good come together, you have excellent, and you can make it work anyway, right? Yeah. So the violence is not something we want to acknowledge, because it creates fear. It creates distrust. It creates even the ability to become aroused. It disrupts the ability to become aroused. And if you think, well, why can't, if the man is berating and telling you ugly and you're stupid, and then slapping you ever so often, or laughing at you and talking about you with his buddies, then it's going to be hard for you to be aroused and attracted to that person or her, because women are doing it now too, you know? So
well, I'm not sure women have ever not been doing it. Abuse by a woman, so maybe we know more of it now, but human beings are human beings, whether male or female. Men probably do it more, but I don't think it was a situation where they weren't at all. Yes. Okay, so remember, God wants you to enjoy sex. God made it in the context of marriage.
And
it is
better.
Beautiful, it's wonderful, it is good when it's in a committed relationship like a marriage where you have covenanted with the other, and he wanted you to connect in that way. And that's why he said to leave your husband, leave your father and your mother, and he says cleave. The cleaving is about connection, both mentally, spiritually, and physically, emotionally. And so we want and start to teach our children differently too.
Yeah.
Don't
Or
tell
young
them.
people
Don't tell them.
especially.
You feel that easy. You feel that penis easy. You feel this. You go on. You go into something. No, don't teach them the wrong things. Tell them no. This is good. This was God made it, but it was made for context. So we need to frame how we talk about sex differently, so that our children can understand it differently. Yes, but understand that there can be some barriers, and we went through some of them. We want to encourage you to go back and listen again. And if you have any questions or you have any comments, please don't be afraid to share with us. Yes?
So definitely we
hope that
at the end.
the background noise didn't get in the way.
wasn't too much.
We're in the political season at this time.
Yes.
So we didn't know about this one. But we hope that it did not affect you being able to hear us or anything like that.
And you know, even those of you who are saying you're waiting your boss, you're waiting your spouse, we want to pray for you that indeed you will meet that person. But I want you, we use a lot of terms. I want you to go back and check the sequence of events that led to Boaz. Make sure you're walking the principle. You don't have to copy anybody, but there are principles in the Bible. There's something that led. There was a connection with an elder, then there was obedience, and there was movement.
Yeah.
That's how the Boaz came into the picture.
Yeah.
And the men have their role to play. And one of the big things about Boaz is Boaz was a man who honored. He was a man who honored what was right. And that's why he was able to marry Ruth. I was going to say Esther. Ruth. And so we want to make sure that you guys, listen, the principles of the Bible will take you through life. That's why God says, I've given you everything you need for life and godliness.
Yeah.
Life and godliness. And so when it comes to looking for a partner, getting married, having sex, raising children, we're doing that. We're still learning. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
we're still learning. We have plenty to learn. The Bible gives us good instruction, and we just have the task of following
That's
it
right.
through.
So just keep looking, keep preparing yourself.
Yes.
Those who are not married yet, be patient. In the process, love yourself.
Love your life.
Enjoy yourself, yes. And as you go out, as you visit churches, and you wherever you go, those nice places, you never know what God can do.
Just don't go to the clubs and the corner to look for the man or the woman.
And as Marilyn said, yes, you're good that you're aware of the principles. Just keep them, don't compromise them.
Yes.
And look back on some of the other sessions we did. You know what are your
standards.
no, not the ones that you won't change.
The non-negotiables.
Non-negotiables.
Yes.
These are the things I won't compromise on. But there's some other things you can compromise on.
I compromise on height with him, but it's where
And I'm not short.
You're not tall either.
I'm tall.
Okay, we're not
I'm
going
not
to
short. You know, they may not have $1 million yet, but they show potential. So sometimes what is non-essential, we make essential, and what is essential, we make non-essential. So just be careful, yes. And God, deal breakers, that's the word.
Yes.
You know what your deal breakers are. You know what you're not going to compromise on. Excellent. So thank you, everybody.
Yes.
We had some competition.
Yeah, but I hope you heard us loud and clear.
Yeah.
Thank you for staying with us, for commenting, share. We are praying for you, and ensure that you continue to build your life, your marriage, your relationship on the principles of God.
Right. One of the things, somebody brought this up with me after hearing the program. They said some men don't know how to express themselves. They don't know how to be emotionally vulnerable. So one of the things we are going to discuss, probably the next episode, we'll talk about that. What if I'm with somebody who they show me they love me, but they don't say that they love me?
But that's not even God-like. But we have to come. We're gonna bring that up to you. We're gonna bring that up to you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you for being
Thank
with
you.
us. We love you.
We may not have next week Monday.
No, because next week Monday's election.
Elections,
so no,
Trinidad and Tobago.
Peeling your ears to hear the results.
Right. So we're not going
So we're not going to disturb you. So we're gonna come the week after, which is the whatever that day is. We're gonna
the
tell
17th.
you. 17.
17.
Yes. Oh shoot, 10 and 7. So guys, have a wonderful night, and thank you for being a part of our Muddy Puddles tonight.
Yes.
I pray you enjoy.
Remember, life will give you muddy puddles. There will be some ups and downs. There will be some challenges, but sometimes you have to jump in the muddy puddles, and there are opportunities for growth, and development and advancement.
Yes.
God bless you, and thanks for the time that you have spent with us. Have a wonderful day.
Good night.
Good night.